Our final guest is also joining us from New York. Concussion Legacy Foundation New York Advisory Board member Nicole Abrams is here to talk about her experience with her son Noah's post-concussion syndrome. So Noah is a junior at Northeastern and a goalkeeper for the men's soccer team. He suffered a concussion during a game in September 2018 that was quite a hit, staples in the head and everything, and dealt with post-concussion syndrome for the following year. He's since recovered, is back to playing soccer and sharing a story to help others understand the seriousness of PCS. And so if you were watching us last week, he joined our webinar to share about the mental health challenges he faced during his recovery. He's a volunteer now for a new mentorship program with our CLF helpline. So this is important for all of you. If you're looking to connect with someone who's shared an experience with PCS, either for your child or even yourself as a parent, please do submit a request to our CLF helpline. Your child may be paired with Noah or someone else from our growing list of mentors. Maybe some of our parents here are always volunteering their time to help others. So Noah's a great kid, and if you get a great kid, it's because they've got great parents. So Nicole, thank you so much for joining us from New York.
Of course, Chris, thank you very much for having me. And it was great, Barbara, David, and Leslie, to hear your stories. So many similarities and crossovers despite their age differences. It's just such a challenging time. So I'm happy to hear that your kids are doing well.
So, and one of the reasons I wanted you to go last is we sort of mentioned that we're actually going in the age of the big concussions for the children, because you can get a concussion at any age. We get outreach from a lot of folks reaching out in high school and college, and at each level it's a little bit different in how you need to take care of your kid, because part of it is, do they live with you or do they not live with you? And Nicole, one of the interesting things I learned in our conversations is the challenge that Noah wasn't living with you when he was hurt. So what did you learn about, first, I think the theme of what I want to talk with you is communication, because you learned a lot about communication that you wanted to share. What did you learn first about communicating with Noah when he was, states away?
Well, it was interesting because you spend sort of your whole life raising your child, teaching them to advocate for themselves, and really teaching them how to go off and be this independent learner and thinker and take control of their life. And then here we were, Noah had suffered this terrible, terrible concussion, and we were in different states, and I all of a sudden had to sort of step in and assist and help him with things that I had not helped him with since he was a young teen or middle schooler. The most difficult part was from the beginning having to leave him, which I didn't leave for almost 2 weeks. I stayed in a hotel and he slept in a rollaway next to me because he was really scared and in a lot of pain. And then trying to sort of navigate with your child, like when they're a little kid and they fall and they skin their knee and they look up and they wonder, is my mom okay with me? Should I cry? Should I not cry? Giving him the space and the independence and saying to him, like, you're gonna be okay. I'm just a train ride away. So I tried to sort of spend my time back and forth without worrying him too much, even though I was very, very worried, as was my husband, David. We were actually at the game when he got his concussion and was taken off the field in a stretcher in an ambulance to the hospital. So it just played over in our minds over and over again. But what I did realize was, by just listening to him on the phone, being in different states, I never really got a full picture than actually living under one roof with him, because it's that look in the eyes. It's exactly what Barbara and Leslie said. It's like the lights are on, but no one's home. Or seeing their reactions or how they interact with their peers. Or seeing how they respond to an ambulance that goes by and a sound, or how they're doing on their walking with them to a class or to the coach and noticing them putting a hoodie on and their glasses on and just seeing how they're dealing with light and sounds and friendships in school. So David and I really tried to have an equal balance of spending time back and forth in Boston. So that was really hard, just having to really see him, get my hands on him, and see him in person. So.
Yeah. And did you ever feel like you were doing too much?
Yeah, because it's really that delicate balance where at times they're saying to you, you know, Mom, I can't do this. This is the worst. I'm miserable. All I want to do is cry. I can't leave my room. I can't get out of my bed, but you're not allowed to call my coach, my advisor, or talk to my friends. So, you know, after communicating and getting him the right physical team, mental, emotional therapists, it was having Noah finally agree with allowing David and I to have open communication with these important people in his life from a school and sport perspective, his siblings, and even his teammates and his roommate. Because if you're not there with them, you need all these people and it takes a village. So he finally understood that this village, you know, loves him and cares about him and wants to help him, and that it's hard to tell someone how you're feeling when they've never experienced anything like this before, and that, you know, we need to communicate with them as well.
Yeah. So there's sort of a couple take-home ideas here. One is that, you know, you were going back and forth to Boston to see him, and I feel like a lot of parents in your situation will always be concerned: am I there too much? Am I there too little? You know, and it's hard to know what that is. And so I think one of the things I took away from you is that, you know, what I remember when I was hurt, I was 23, and I told my parents, you know, I'm fine as long as I answer the phone once a week. Like, don't ask questions about how I'm doing, because I wasn't doing well. But you've sort of earned his trust, and kept showing up. But I feel like the message to take away for parents here is that, you know, if you think you're doing too much, you're probably doing just the right amount. Like, there's probably not, you can't care too much, right? Because Noah was always honest with you about how he felt. Right? I mean, I had him read a passage that he wrote in a newspaper, or school newspaper, that the first time you heard him talk about having thoughts of suicide, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And we've talked about that after the fact, because I think it was very hard to express when he was in it. And he wrote that article once he sort of was emotionally stronger after a lot of help and anti-anxiety and depression medication. He described that, because I, of course, said to myself, oh my God, the mother that shows up every week and cleans his room and does his laundry and makes sure he has meals and communicates with his friends was thinking about taking his life, and I didn't even know. But what he explained was it wasn't really that he wanted to take his life. He just didn't want to live if he had to live with that headache for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
That was that. And yes, that was the first time that I had ever heard that, and seeing it in black and white. And he was then interviewed on a local TV station about it and putting it out in front of his peers. I mean, it was really unbelievable. But seeing him, back to how much is too much, he allowed this open communication. So when I spoke with his therapist, I said, how do I know when I need to be there? And he said, it's maternal instincts. You'll know.
Yeah.
So my deal with Noah is I'm home, and when you really, really need me, I'm coming. So whenever he asked me to come, I went.
No, that's wonderful. And he thanked you. You know, I could tell how much you appreciated it last week on the webinar. So you started to talk about this. I just want to revisit it. So we worked on communication with Noah, and then you gained his trust, even though he didn't want to initially let you do it. And then you started to keep tabs on him since you weren't there. You started talking to the people in his life who were there with him, right? So you mentioned coach, roommates. So who did you talk to? How did you sort of organize what I'd call, you know, your surveillance network to make sure that you had eyes on Noah?
Well, the very first thing that David and I did that was the most important, because we have a very close family. Noah has a younger sister and an older brother, both that were living in California in college at the time. And I had them, each one of them decided what day they were checking up on him. And my daughter became the nighttime person, and sometimes she had to sleep on the phone. And I had to do that as well with Noah overnight, with the phones to our ear because he just needed to know someone was there for him. So certainly his siblings. He is very close with his grandparents. So that was also that text message, hey, no, it's grandpa, you want to catch up? So just hearing and maybe a little bombarding, but hearing, I think he felt very loved and connected. And then one of his roommates in particular, that was the captain of the team that year, who was a senior and is still currently his roommate, even though he graduated, he slept in the room next to Noah. They had adjoining walls. And I said to him, I said, Noah, is it okay if I stay in communication with your friend? And he said, yes. So I gave him my phone number and I took his phone number, and he actually would text me when Noah had, he seemed to have these crying episodes every night at the same time. And he just didn't know why he was crying. He was just crying. And they had a little secret knock that if he was crying, his roommate would knock and he would knock back and his roommate would come and hang out with him. So I kept in communication with his roommate. And then his coach, similar to what David and Leslie were saying, you know, coaches don't necessarily get that involved nor have the education to understand concussions, or they just don't want to understand. But once Noah was no longer his quote unquote player at the time, he really did emotionally support him. And the coach made sure that someone on the team was constantly with him at mealtime. Does anyone, who's having breakfast with Noah today? Who's having dinner with Noah? Who's checking in with Noah? So it was almost as if there was like very rarely a time in the day where someone wasn't really looking out for Noah. And although it sounds really overbearing, he didn't really know it. And these people that cared, you know, it wasn't as if it was just a forced love or caring. And I think that was, you know, really, really helpful. So there, I communicated with his friends. I communicated with the coach about the emotional stuff, but the communication about sport, it was a whole different story. So. Yeah.
But I was fascinated by how you basically, you know, people would check in and tell you how Noah was doing. So you always sort of knew. You always knew. And and the family would get on a phone call together and talk about how Noah was to them when they talked to him that day, right?
Exactly.
So it's a great system. And so that's sort of communication too. So first was with Noah, then was amongst everyone around Noah communicating. And then I thought it was very interesting when you said you sort of shifted to becoming Noah's communicator for a while to the outside world. So, and I'll frame it as, you know, it was very clear that Noah sort of couldn't handle what he could handle before. He wasn't the same college, you know, well-prepared person, student that he was before. And so you stepped in, and I think for parents who are worried about this, on a temporary basis, until you do it again, and sort of communicated with the folks around him for him. So tell me more about what you did there.
So Noah was, of our three, always the self-starter, the most independent kid, always a smile on his face. And even when he had a concussion, he would still walk in front of that professor and smile, walk in front of the coach and smile, and he would say it would be his fake it thing. So no one could really understand how he was feeling, or maybe even at that moment he felt okay, right? And being so independent, he grew up in a foreign country. He played very competitive professional sports all over Europe. His whole childhood, went off to boarding school quite young for soccer, then went off to college. And I had never, ever written one email to a teacher, to a professor, to anyone ever. He has pretty significant learning differences and had a lot of support. So was taught quite young how to advocate for himself. And everything in his life was from putting his cleats out in the morning and washing his goalie gloves and packing his game kit. Everything, his backpack was perfect. Everything was perfect. And then he got hit in the head and he couldn't see the forest from the trees. So it became, how do I do this? How do I tell my professor I can't go to class? How do I tell the coach I can't show up at 5 a.m. workouts with sunglasses on every single day? How do I tell my advisor I want to take this pass-fail? So rather than just completely taking over, when you needed me to, I did, and CC'd him. But I always tried to encourage him to send the emails and to speak with the coaches, but CC me. Because I always felt once they saw a parent involved, that it was a little different than just seeing, the student or the athlete involved. So I really had to do everything. I mean, he had been doing his own laundry in boarding school, laundry in college. He couldn't do anything. So I just really went back to like middle school years.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to do. And it's, wow, I guess, it was about 8, 9, 10 months later, and he was right back into, all right, now, Mom, get out of my life, just pay my bills and my tuition. So, so he needed it, and he was willing to get the help because he could not function with his day-to-day skills in life without help.
I think that was an important point to share, because I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, and like, you feel like, are you enabling something? Are you getting in their way? But it's just, I thought of it. It's just like if they hurt their leg, they need a crutch temporarily. He just served as that crutch, so it would have less of an impact on his life, and he could focus on getting better, right?
And he had 21 years of us sort of teaching him how to be a self-starter and advocate, and for a short period of time, this is what he needed from us. And then, we were more than willing to help. So he got through his semester. He was meant to take an incomplete in many classes. He finished up strong, and he's recovered and doing great.
Yeah. All right. So the last question I have for you, that's again that unique situation for you, was that when your child's in college, and this might be specific to recruited athletes, things can be difficult. And interests cannot always be aligned. And the reality is different schools handle this differently. Some schools are terrific and some schools less so. So what kind of conversations do you have with Noah's coach, and what advice do you have for parents of college athletes dealing with this sort of concussion situation?
Well, the NCAA with Division I automatically provides you with a list of doctors within their network within the school. And we were lucky, and everything was just a delay. He had a concussion on a Saturday, and they were like, oh, next Thursday you can meet this doctor, and next 2 weeks from Wednesday we'll get you into the neurologist, et cetera, et cetera. We were lucky enough to have some contacts within the sports industry, and Boston being such a great city for great medical care, we were fortunate enough to get the right support and help, and pretty early on, which is amazing because of people like you, Chris, that have really, it's years later than what Barbara, David, and Leslie had gone through with their children. So we had a great group. But what was frustrating a bit was I was never, nor was Noah, never supposed to communicate directly with the coach about anything about your physical health, whether it's a sprained ankle, a pulled groin, or a concussion. It all goes through an athletic trainer. An athletic trainer in which he's maybe a year out of college, and Noah's, a year older than most kids from a postgraduate year. So maybe he was a year or two older than Noah, and he was in charge of Noah's recovery and communicating to the coach. And I found that very difficult. And this coach in particular, although, I mentioned that he was really just so warm and involved in Noah's emotional well-being and getting better once I had the opportunity to meet him. But up until that point, it was, hi, coach, good game. Hi, coach, good to see you. Parents don't speak to coaches. He comes out of the locker room, coaches the team, goes back into the locker room, done. Not approachable at all. But every single time I stepped foot on that campus of Northeastern, I made an appointment and I sat down with the coach. And I made sure he understood what was going on, not the Noah who makes it to a 5 a.m. practice and sits on the sidelines with his sunglasses on, but what was really going on at home. The crying every night, the captain of the team who was there for him when he was crying, coming home most weekends or me coming there, the depression, the anxiety, I tried to find a therapist for him through the school right away, and they could not find me someone within a certain period of time, and that if it were so urgent, he should call 911. So I just decided I'm not communicating through an athletic trainer. I am communicating directly to the coach. So I had an open dialogue with him, and he actually, in the end, was very respectful. He called me, I would say, twice a week. If I didn't show up at the office, he phoned me twice a week. So he was responsive about Noah's emotional health. He was. But once Noah got back on that pitch, no more concussion. I haven't heard from him again. So.
Yeah, no, it's complicated. So it's great that's a great story that he would meet with you every time, and again, sometimes take that first parent of his first athlete to go through what Noah went through to educate them.
And he did come to the hospital a lot. The whole coaching staff showed up at the hospital with the whole team. So I mean, they were all very concerned. It was very scary because sometimes a lot of these concussions, when you don't see it and you don't realize it. But I think Noah's was just a very scary sight. He was unconscious for a while, and it was bleeding a lot, and probably one of the first athletes to be taken off that way. So they were worried, and they really cared. They did.
Yeah,
they couldn't give us the right medical follow-up.
Yeah, no, glad to hear. Yeah, Northeastern's got a great rep as a Boston school, and as do the coaches. So great. Any other parting thoughts you want to share with parents, or?
No, I think it sounds like all of us have been really on the same page, and it's knowing your child, and it's looking into their eyes, and it's telling them no matter what, they're going to be okay, because you're going to make sure it's okay, no matter how long it takes, and advocating for them till the day I die. That's my job.